It starts with a realization, not a sudden one, but the kind that settles in slowly, like the creep of rust on steel or the shift of a foundation under pressure. You notice it first in the details, the way conversations feel scripted, the way your presence is tolerated but never centered, the way decisions are made around you but never with you. And then it hits you. This was never about partnership. It was about control, about maintaining the illusion of inclusion while keeping you just outside the gate. This isn't about a mistake. It's about a design, a calculated exclusion disguised as access, a hierarchy dressed up as collaboration. Someone believed that because they held the keys, whether through status, proximity, or influence, they could dictate the terms of your involvement. They assumed you'd stay in the space they allowed, that you'd accept the role they assigned, that you'd never question the structure they built. But here's what they didn't count on. You saw the blueprint. And once you see the framework, you can't unsee it. What follows isn't dramatic. It's methodical. A slow unraveling of trust, not in a single moment of collapse, but through repeated acts of exclusion, misalignment, and emotional withdrawal. You notice who celebrates you in public, but minimizes you in private. You notice who smiles in group settings, but grows distant when it's just the two of you. And perhaps most telling of all, you notice who benefits from your silence, who uses your presence to bolster their image while quietly undermining your foundation. This wasn't partnership, it was performance, a carefully constructed facade designed to keep you close enough to be useful, but never close enough to be equal. And the moment you begin to see yourself clearly, independent, capable, self-sustaining, the dynamic changes. Because when someone realizes you don't need them the way they thought you did, it forces them to confront their own insecurity. And insecurity, when exposed, doesn't soften people, it hardens them. Instead of rising to meet you, they retreat, emotionally, psychologically, strategically. They create distance while pretending nothing has changed, as if ignoring the shift will make it disappear. But distance doesn't erase awareness. It sharpens it, and that awareness triggers something in them, anxiety. Not the kind that paralyzes, but the kind that reveals, the fear of exposure, the dread of being seen for the imbalance they helped create. You felt it first, the shift in tone, the defensiveness, the subtle rewriting of history. Conversations that once flowed easily became strained. Accountability was deflected, responsibility blurred. And in that space, doubt crept in, not because you were wrong, but because you were made to question your right to clarity. But here's where the turning point begins. Instead of shrinking under that pressure, you stepped back. You started choosing yourself, quietly, without announcement, without fanfare. You invested your energy differently. You focused on stability, on independence, on reclaiming the parts of your life that had been put on hold while you waited for someone else to meet you halfway. And that self-sufficiency, emotional, mental, practical, changed everything. Because now, you're no longer operating from need. You're operating from choice. The anxiety that once kept you awake at night has shifted. It hasn't disappeared entirely, but it no longer controls you. It's been replaced by awareness, the kind that comes from seeing patterns clearly, from recognizing the cycles of avoidance, the emotional inconsistency, the way certain people lean on charm or silence instead of honesty. And seeing it doesn't make you bitter, it makes you decisive. You're no longer trying to fix what refuses to be accountable. You're no longer pouring energy into spaces that don't return it. What's emerging now is a quieter confidence, one that doesn't need validation from people who couldn't meet you with honesty, one that doesn't need inclusion from spaces that required you to diminish yourself. There's grief in that realization, and it deserves to be acknowledged. You're grieving not just a person, but a future you were led to believe was possible, a shared vision that never fully materialized because one side was never truly invested in building it. That grief may show up as anger, as exhaustion, or even as self-doubt. But underneath it all is strength, the kind that comes from surviving disappointment without losing yourself. What's emerging now is clarity, the kind that comes from standing on solid ground, from choosing yourself consistently, even when it's uncomfortable. You understand now that access is not the same as commitment, and proximity is not the same as loyalty. And that understanding freed you from chasing validation where it was never guaranteed. This next phase isn't about proving anything. It's about alignment. It's about choosing environments, relationships, and opportunities that don't require you to compromise your integrity to belong. You're no longer trying to fit through gates that were never designed for your growth. You're building your own path, one defined by balance, honesty, and self-respect. And as you move forward, you'll notice something subtle but powerful. The anxiety fades. The noise quiets. The doubt loses its grip. Because when you stop forcing yourself into spaces that resist you, peace follows naturally. What remains now is momentum, steady, intentional, self-directed. You're not rushing towards something new just to escape the past. You're moving forward because you're ready. Because you've learned. Because you've outgrown what once limited you. And whatever unfolds next, connection, opportunity, expansion, it will meet you where you are now, grounded, aware, and no longer willing to settle for less than mutual respect. That's not loss. That's evolution. Before you head out, make sure you're subscribed. See you in the next one.